Hello and welcome to today's project. So what we're going to do today is this composition of what I call summer trees, and the technique I'm going to show you today is the technique you can see on the right hand side here, which I have actually removed the paint. So when people tell you that you can't ever take paint away when you're doing watercolour, it's not true. What you do need to do is to choose the colour carefully you're going to take away, because not all colours will come off the paper again. And this, a famous one for this, is called Ultramarine blue, and this comes off really easily. So you can see we've got the composition with trees with pale trunks, probably birches, and we've got on the right hand side of the composition trees with dark trunks. Let's think maybe these are thick old oaks. And we've got a green and blue area here and quite a light area here, and you can see the darkest dark of this trunk is next to a light area. That means that it becomes your focal point, so when you look at the painting you look straight at this area here. Please note that it's not in the middle, it's slightly off-centered, so this is where we're looking here. So the first thing we're going to do in our project is we're going to draw it out, and because if I draw it out on the watercolour paper you won't be able to see it, I've decided to draw it on sketch paper. So here's the frame we're going to draw around. Why do we draw around the frame? It's to give us a sort of composition to start off with, but please make sure that when you paint outside the frame. When you paint outside the frame, it means you have a choice. You can move it that way, and if you move it slightly that way. So I've got about a centimetre I can move it up and down, which gives you choices when you're mounting your composition. Very easy composition to draw, don't overdraw it. So we start here about a third of the way up from the bottom, and we draw a wobbly line that goes off the bottom edge, not off at the corner. Then we do the same thing on the other side, a wobbly line, and so you've got a dip here which is about almost a third of the way across your paper. Then very roughly draw some tree trunks here. Now birches have usually got quite slim trunks. What we don't want to draw is 3 trunks with exactly the same space in between them, so make sure you do 2 that are quite close and a third one maybe across here. You don't need to do any more than this. And then on this side we will draw our thicker trunk here and maybe a few branches there, and maybe we want something happening here as well. Okay, we're going to do a very rough area here and a very rough area here, and basically that's your sketch. I'll put this up on the site, but basically it's not a very complicated sketch. Do have a try at doing it yourself rather than copying mine. So as always, we move from sketch to the next section, and the next section is colour. And what I can say about colour is, well, coloured board, probably not ideal. Choose colours you like, because basically at the end of your composition, if you haven't got colours you like, you probably won't like your painting. So this stage is really important to do. Take some water and a thick brush. I have chosen the colours already. I've chosen ultramarine blue, I've chosen burnt sienna, and I've chosen a lemon yellow. I didn't have my glasses on and I've put the wrong colour in there. It's a purple. We're going to disregard that. When I was putting the colours in the palette, if you're like me and you've got some colours that are near the end of their life, it's difficult sometimes to get the tops off. The paint gets around the edge and it's very difficult. All you need to do if your top is stuck, is to boil some water and just invert it upside down in boiling water for maybe 10 seconds, and then you'll find your top comes off quite easily. Do be careful, because when you turn your top to get it off, you'll have turned the top of the tube of paint, and the paint will come out quite fast then. So just be a little bit gentle when you take the top off, that your paint doesn't squirt out everywhere. So I'm going to put the burnt sienna in this tube here. Good, and then move those out of the way. And the first thing we're going to do is have a look what we get for the colours. So let's start with the raw sienna, burnt sienna, and then if we add the yellow to it, that will have quite a bright colour. So it is spring, so I do want some of the colours to be quite bright. The danger with having this extra colour in the palette is if you're not thinking, your brush will go in there. So basically this is a case of do what I say, don't do what I do. This shouldn't be here. This ultramarine will go really nicely with this and make a really nice brown. See, there is no reason to use a brown out of a tube, because the ultramarine and the burnt sienna makes a fantastic brown. And then I just want to see what sort of green I get with and there you can get some. So that is going to be my colour palette. Just to repeat, the colours I've used are lemon yellow, ultramarine and burnt sienna. You can of course use different colours for this, but if you want to take the paint out of your tree trunks, I would advise you to use the ultramarine. So once we've decided on the colours, we go back to our composition. And to start with, I'm going to mix up a very pale wash. So water in, clean-ish water into there, a little bit of yellow and a little bit of this colour, and then, no, that's not a bad colour. Good, and we're going to actually put some clean water on the top here. And I'm going to stop at the line of the ground, but if it drips in a bit, don't worry about that. And that should be wet all over. And how can we tell that it's wet? We hold it up to the light, you probably can't see this, and it's shiny. Too dark. Okay. See how it's very pale? Now, if you find it's too dark down in this area here, don't resist the temptation to dab it off with the tissue. So you'll get strong lines. So what we do is we clean the paintbrush completely and just add a bit of water here. But don't forget, your paint will always dry lighter than you expect it to. So as long as you've got a fairly light bit down at the bottom here, that's fine. Good. So now I'm going to have to dry that off and completely, and we'll go back to the next section. Okay, the painting, the first coat is now dry. You can see it's dry because not only is the paper now matte, it's no longer shiny, but there are no dips and wrinkles in the paper. This is quite important if you're going to put a second layer of paint on there, that the first layer is completely dry. Otherwise you may get unpredictable effects. this could be good to get unpredictable effects, but quite often it's when you get what we call cauliflowers, and these are trees, so if we get cauliflowers in the middle of the trees, it'll be fine, we can paint over the top of them. But if you're painting another composition, you may not want cauliflowers, so completely dry paper. So what we're going to do now is to clean-ish. I usually have 2 waters on the go, which means I've got one really clean one, and here we've got the blue, and you can see that's a really bright blue, and then we're going to mix up some of this yellow. It's a really violent yellow. You'll find that if you buy paints from different manufacturers and brands, sometimes they're a slightly different colour. I always recommend, if you find a brand that you like, to stick with it, and then you won't have any surprises. So you can see I'm putting a lot of water in here, but when I put the water in, I'm not washing the brush. I'm just dipping the brush in and taking the water out. Right, that'll do. And then a bit more of the blue. Okay, so we'll start with this area here, and I'm going to make this quite pale, and this is going to be a bit of sky that's showing through. You can also see that I've tipped my board. I'm not quite sure what that is. It's a little plastic thing, and it just gives me a little angle to put it on, but you can put it on anything. You could use your tape, anything, so you've just got a little bit of an angle so your paint is running down. Now that's running down, and so what I want to do is to just soften at the edge there, and it's now drying. That's fine. Now the composition means I'm going to have some dark colours here, and I'm going to go and put some dark colours here. So there will be definitely the dark ultramarine down here, because we'll need to be able to take these white tree trunks out. So let's start at the top. You can wet your paper again if you want to. I'm going to paint fairly quickly, so I won't need to. And when we come down to here, some darker colours down here, and until we get to this line. Right, got a strong line here. Wash your paintbrush and just touch the edge. Wash the paintbrush again and touch the edge. My paper and paint are still wet, so I'm going to add more colour up here. You can see I can flick it in because it's still wet and it's moving around. Keep an eye on it. If it comes past this line here, you'll need to soften it up again. Green in this. Got a white bit there, that's good. Let's leave that. Okay, so you've got something happening down here. Maybe I want that, or maybe I can just wash my brush, take the water out and just scoop it up. That's quite a nice part there as a tree, so I think I'll leave that part. So I'll take a little bit out of this. Oh, it's running too much, then just move your board down onto the flat again. That's working okay. A bit more dark up here. Okay, I'm going to dry that off now and see what it looks like. So I'll dry it off and I'll be back in a moment. Good, as you can see it's now dry and we've got some nice diffused areas, but what you need to make sure that you've got a strong dark blue area down here and a darker area up here. There's some rather strange smudgy green bits in here, but don't worry about that, we can fix that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a water-soluble crayon and I'm going to redraw this tree trunk here. So it's got a very knobbly bark, so not a straight line. And we draw it about like that. And then it does need to be planted. So don't plant it directly on this line here. Make sure it comes a little bit past this area. And then we'll have some nice twigs going up from there, and we'll have another one going up from here. Make sure that they don't go off at the same place. So you want to think of nice Y shapes. And then we're going to have something else in here. Now these are water soluble, so when I paint over the top of this, it will diffuse into the paper. And some more here. It's good, and we'll paint those, and that I'm going to use my red and my blue. And you can see how there's different colours in the trunk, so don't paint it so it's all the same colour. Can you see there's different tone in there? I can add a little bit more blue in there. You can decide which way the light is coming from. So if I say the light is coming from here, actually the light is coming from behind this tree, but you can make this side of it slightly darker. And then just paint up. To the tree. And then smudge that in. I've got quite a rough paper, so I'm able to get some nice effects in the foreground. And stroke your brush over the paper. That's good. Get some nice texture in there. Important to don't make it too dark as it comes off the edge, because then it will lead your eye out of the composition. So make sure that that's not too dark on that area there. Let me do these. Yeah. You can go for a smaller brush here if you want. Different colours, not the same colour. And we'll do the rest later. And now what I want to show you now, it's important you have clean water, which I no longer have. And go into your blue bit here, and you need a tissue in one hand, and with your clean water, stroke down. You can already see, I hope, that the paint is coming off. So this is how we're going to put in these trunks here. And we'll have another one here. Let's have a slightly thicker one here. that's how the ultramarine works. And gives us some nice light trunks. So we continue up. Do it in sections, don't do it all at the same time. And don't forget they bend a little bit. You'll find when you get up to this section here, it doesn't come off, or it doesn't show very easily. And then I go to my tiny brush, and let's just put in a few little branches coming up here. See, magic, you can remove the... I'm just going to have another, put in a bit of this section down here, so I'm going to make this greener. So what I want to show you now is a bit, I'm going to add a little bit more to these trees here. So now my brush is going to dance over the edge of this section here. Little bits on the edge. The light's coming from the top, so you'll have some darker areas underneath. And what we're going to do now is to mix up some quite dark green, and we take a sponge. So we take our sponge, my sponge is quite rough, and it's got different textured bits all the way over. So soften up. A bit further down here. Okay. Good, I'm going to dry that off again, and I'll put in some more branches. So it's dry now, and you can see it's dried a bit lighter, so I'd still like a few more dark areas here, so I'm going to mix up some quite dark blue with my yellow. I'm just going to take my sponge again and add a little bit more to here. As with all techniques, don't overdo it too much. And I'm going to add a few more areas of tree trunk in here, so let's here. And you have to imagine this tree trunk is up here, and so you'll need to add in. You might need to change a really small paintbrush. Now this summer, so there's quite a lot of foliage on this tree, so these little pieces of branches will not be terribly visible, so don't put in too many. Also resist just doing branches like this. It's rare. There are some sort of trees that branches do go like that, but try and draw your branches so that they're more like this. So this one, not that one. I'll put a bit more down here. Good. My brush is here and I flick up. Brush here, flick up. Change the colour. And what I can also look at, these look a little bit strange, these, so we take some of the blue and we can draw inside, so we can put another branch in here, and then some darker colours in the background. Slightly better than pretty dark in there as well. We're almost finished, so it's almost time to go and put it in to your kitchen or in your office, somewhere where you're going to look at it for a while. But just on the foreground, I think we'll put a toothbrush work. So do you remember how the toothbrush works? So you hold it, thumb over the top and finger. Good, so I think that's okay for today, and what we're going to do is just put the frame on and we'll have a look how your final painting looks, and put it somewhere where you can look at it for a couple of days. I'm not sure I'm ever so happy with those tree trunks there. I might need to do a little bit of work on those. They're a little bit it's this one here that I'm not quite keen on, and also we do need to plant them a bit so they don't look as if they're just sticking up out of the ground. So let's give them a little bit of shadow. Good, but I'm going to put that on one side and think about it for a while. So have fun with your painting, and please, if you'd like to send me your painting, a couple of you have sent me your paintings in. Thank you very much, that's great. And what we've had is a little discussion about what's working well and what maybe you could do a little bit differently next time round. So have fun painting. Goodbye.